Marlowe's hands crushed my throat, stars bursting in my vision. Sophia clawed at his arms, but his strength was unnatural, driven by obsession. His eyes gleamed with a feverish light, fixed not on me, but on the pit where the god below clawed its way upward. The first hand had found purchase, gripping the stone lip. The second rose higher, ichor streaming down its length, burning holes in the floor. The cavern shook with every movement, the faceless creatures convulsing in ecstasy. With a final surge, I twisted beneath Marlowe and slammed my knee into his chest. He grunted, loosening his grip just enough for me to shove him off. I scrambled toward my machete, its blade glinting faintly in the glow of the rising god. Sophia pulled me up, gasping. "It wants blood," she said, her voice hoarse, panicked. "If we don't feed it, the seal breaks. Everything ends." Marlowe staggered to his feet, eyes wild. "Yes, then feed it. One of us must go. One life for the world." His gaze locked on Sophia again. "No!" I snarled, positioning myself between them. "If it demands blood, it gets mine." The words spilled before I could stop them, but I knew they were true. The whispers filled my skull, urging, coaxing, promising. My body trembled under the weight of their hunger. The city didn't want just any blood, it wanted willing sacrifice. Sophia grabbed my arm, her nails digging deep. "No, that's what it wants you to believe. It feeds on choices, on surrender. That's how it wins." Marlowe lunged. This time I was ready. My machete flashed, and his cry echoed against the cavern walls. He stumbled backward, clutching his side, blood spilling through his fingers. The whispers surged. The altar above must have awakened, for the grooves in the cavern floor glowed, channels running red toward the pit. The god's hands froze, claws scraping as the blood spread. It wasn't enough, but it was some. Nothing. Marlowe collapsed, coughing blood, laughing even as his life drained away. "You see? I was right. Blood seals the lock. My death will be remembered. I am the savior." His words cut short as the god's hand reached higher. The blood slowed. The seal was not satisfied. The truth struck like lightning. It wasn't about one sacrifice. It wanted more. It always wanted more. The city had survived centuries because entire generations had fed it willingly, binding themselves to keep the world above safe. Sophia met my gaze, tears streaking her face. "It'll never stop, will it?" "No," I whispered. "But maybe we can." The whispers clawed at my mind, furious now. "Feed, free us, forever." I took Sophia's hand. For a brief moment, warmth cut through the stench of stone and ichor. Then we both stepped toward the pit. Her grip tightened. Together, then. We stood at the edge as the god's claws reached higher, blotting out the torchlight. I raised the machete, cut our palms, and let our blood drip into the glowing grooves. The city shuddered. The whispers screamed. The hands faltered, slipping, ichor spraying as they sank back into the pit. The faceless creatures shrieked without mouths, dissolving like smoke in wind. The cavern roared, as if the earth itself convulsed. Our blood kept flowing. My knees buckled, vision dimming. Sophia swayed, her grip still locked with mine. As the darkness closed in, the last thing I heard was silence, real silence, as the god sank back into its prison. The city slept again, but it was only sleeping. The cavern pulsed with sound, a vibration that rattled my ribs and made my teeth ache. The faceless figures pressed closer to the pit, their smooth heads tilted downward in unison, like worshippers awaiting benediction. Luis writhed on the ground, the stone overtaking his torso. Each breath he drew was labored, scraping, as if gravel shifted in his lungs. "End me," he begged, his eyes locked on mine. "Don't let me finish as one of them." I hesitated, machete heavy in my hand, my throat closed, but Sophia knelt beside him, tears streaking her face. "We'll find a way," she whispered. Luis gave a broken smile. Too late. His chest cracked with a sound like splintering marble. His scream choked off, cut short as the stone consumed him completely. What remained was a statue, twisted in agony, added to the countless others the city had claimed. Sophia collapsed forward, pressing her forehead to the cold stone body. Marlowe, meanwhile, didn't look at Luis at all. His gaze was fixed on the pit, where the shadows churned like an ocean in storm. "Do you feel it?" he whispered, torchlight flickering across his manic grin. "It's rising. The old power. The forgotten god. It wants us. It chose us." The whispers swelled. They filled every crevice of my skull, every vein of my body, hammering in rhythm with my pulse. words I didn't know, yet somehow understood. Feed. Break the seal. Free us. The faceless figures swayed, their movements synchronized, arms stretching outward toward the pit. From below came a hand. Not stone, not flesh, something between, vast and slick, its surface glistening with slime that smelled of sulfur and blood. The fingers curled, each the size of a tree trunk, scrabbling against the pit's edge. The cavern shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The serpentine carvings on the columns writhed, their mouths gaping in silent screams. Sophia stumbled back, clutched.
Ching, my arm. We have to stop it. If it climbs out, how? I demanded, panic clawing my throat. How do you stop something that's been buried for centuries?
Marlowe answered with madness in his eyes. With blood. That's why the altar exists. It demands sacrifice. Feed it, and the seal strengthens. That's what they did. Generation after generation. His words chilled me, but deep down I knew he wasn't wrong. The grooves in the altar. The basin stained with blood. The city wasn't just a prison. It was a feeding trough. The hand hauled higher, its claws screeching against stone. The faceless things fell prostrate, their smooth heads pressing to the floor in worship. Marlowe dropped his torch and grabbed Sophia. She screamed, struggling as he dragged her toward the pit. "One life to save thousands," he shouted. "Don't you see? She's the key." I lunged, tackling him. The three of us tumbled across the stone, my machete skittering out of reach. Marlowe fought with surprising strength, driven by fanatic desperation. His hands closed around my throat, squeezing, his face a mask of zealotry. Behind us, the hand reached higher. A second began to rise, massive fingers curling, dripping ichor that hissed as it hit the stone. The whispers roared so loudly my skull felt like it would split. Blood, seal, feed. If Marlowe was right, only sacrifice could hold it back. But who would it demand? The plaza had become a trap, a stone throat preparing to swallow us. The faceless figures pressed closer, their numbers multiplying with every blink until they ringed us in a perfect circle, their blank faces tilted, listening to something we could not hear. Luis groaned beside me, half man, half statue. His breaths came in ragged gasps, his stony arm hanging like dead weight. Still, his eyes blazed with determination. "We can't fight them," he said. "We go down, deeper. Maybe there's another way." Sophia's jaw tightened, but she nodded. The idea of retreating further into the city felt like stepping into a furnace to escape the flames, yet the faceless things left us no choice. Marlowe laughed, a raw, broken sound. "Down, yes. That's where the truth waits. That's where the key is." We moved as one, torches raised, searching the plaza's edges for another passage. The faceless creatures parted as we moved, forming corridors with their silent bodies, as though herding us like livestock. Their presence bent the air, thick and cold, making it hard to breathe. At the far end, we found stairs spiraling downward, choked by vines and roots. The carvings around them were fresh, too sharp to be ancient. They pulsed faintly, the inverted pyramid appearing again and again, interlocked with symbols I could not decipher. As we descended, the jungle's humidity gave way to something far worse, a suffocating heat, heavy with iron and rot. The deeper we went, the more the walls shimmered with moisture as though the stone itself was sweating. Luis faltered, leaning heavily on me, his body stiffening further. Stone crept to his chest now, his eyes darted to mine. "Don't let me become one of them," he whispered. "Promise me." I couldn't answer. The words stuck like thorns in my throat. The stairs ended in a cavern vast enough to house a cathedral. Columns rose like blackened writ. BS, their surfaces etched with spirals that seemed to writhe in the torchlight. At the chamber's center lay a pit, perfectly circular, its depths lost in shadow. The whispers roared here, no longer faint threads, but a chorus of voices. Marlowe approached the edge, his torch held high. "It's a well," he breathed. "No, not a well, a mouth." The pit exhaled and the torches bent toward it, flames straining like grass in the wind. The air stank of sulfur and decay, undercut by the sharp tang of copper. Sophia grabbed Marlowe's arm. "Step back. You don't know what's in there." He shook her off, eyes glassy. "I know exactly what's here. The heart of the city. The thing they feared, the thing they tried to bury. Don't you see? We're standing above a god. The word God made my stomach churn. No god would crawl beneath the earth, feeding on blood and silence. Luis collapsed suddenly, stone cracking across his chest. His scream echoed, half human, half grinding rock. The sound triggered something. The pit answered. From its depths came a rumble, low and endless, a vibration that rattled my bones. The air thickened, pressing on my lungs. Shapes writhed far below, vast and indistinct, as though the earth itself shifted in restless sleep. Then, from the walls, the faceless things emerged again, crawling, gliding, dozens of them. They lined the cavern like worshippers at a sermon. Sophia whispered what I already knew. It isn't buried. It's waiting. The trees had sealed the path, trunks twisting together like the bars of a cage. Marlowe hacked at them wildly, but every swing of his machete seemed to make the wood denser, the vines tougher, as though the city itself mocked his efforts. It wasn't like this before, he stammered. Sweat poured down his temples, his breath ragged. We came this way. We did. Luis pulled him back. Stop. You're feeding it. His words chilled me, but I couldn't deny the truth of them. The jungle had reshaped itself, not naturally but with intent. Each tree stood too straight, too aligned, as if obeying orders. Sophia crouched near the statues, her eyes darting. Do you feel that? At first I didn't. Then I noticed the air trembling, as though a low hum vibrated through the stone. Dust shifted across the plaza floor in rhythm, and beneath it, faint but growing clearer, footsteps. The figures from the tree line were closer now. They moved without sound, their long frames bending in unnatural arcs. When one stepped into the open, my stomach turned. Its face was smooth, no eyes, no mouth, only stretched skin over a skull-like shape, yet somehow I felt its gaze. Luis whispered a prayer and raised his machete. The thing tilted its head, curious, almost playful. Then, in a movement too fast to follow, it was inches from him. Luis swung, but the blade passed through as if cutting smoke. The creature leaned close, pressing its blank face near his. The air grew colder, sharp as ice water down my spine. Luis screamed, staggering back. His machete clattered to the stones. Where the creature touched him, his skin dulled, paling to the same gray tone as the statues. His arms stiffened, stone crept along his flesh, veins hardening, fingers curling into claws locked in mid-motion. "Don't let it touch you!" Sophia cried. I dragged Luis back, though his arm was heavy, lifeless stone up to the shoulder. He wept, teeth grinding as he fought the spread. "Cut it off," he begged. "Please, before it takes me." Marlowe froze, horror etched into his face. My stomach twisted, but I raised the machete. Luis nodded once, eyes hard, resigned. Before I could swing, the stone stopped spreading. The creature had retreated, slipping back among its kin like smoke dissolving in air. Luis slumped against me, half stone, half man, trembling with shallow breaths. "They're not killing us," Sophia said, voice low. "They're harvesting us, feeding the city." Her gaze shifted to the statues surrounding us, those anguished faces. Not carved, I realized. Not created, transformed. Marlowe staggered to his feet, eyes wild. "We need the altar. We must understand what power they sealed here. If we break it, if we finish the ritual, they'll lose control." "No," I snapped. "That thing isn't meant to be freed. The altar was a lock, not a weapon." But even as I said it, the whispering rose again, curling inside my head with promises I couldn't quite push away. Power. Knowledge. Immortality. Luis coughed, blood bubbling at his lips. "Decide quickly," he rasped. "Because they're not waiting." At the edges of the plaza, more figures emerged. Dozens this time. Their smooth faces tilted in unison, blank yet horribly aware. The city groaned, a sound like stone grinding against stone. And the statues. They were listening too. We stumbled back into the overgrown plaza, gasping for air as though we'd surfaced from deep water. The wall loomed silently behind us, its carvings dull in daylight, though my eyes swore the glow still lingered faintly beneath the stone. Luis wouldn't look at it. His hands trembled as he gripped his machete, lips moving in silent prayer. Marlowe sat slumped against a root, wiping blood from his nose. The whispering hadn't left him. It scratched at all of us still, like claws against the inside of our skulls. "We shouldn't have gone in," Sophia muttered. Her gaze darted constantly, as if expecting the trees themselves to lean closer. "That wasn't a tomb or a temple. It was containment." Marlowe coughed, his laugh brittle. "Containment? Nonsense. We're projecting our fears onto stone. These ruins, this city, are proof of an advanced, forgotten civilization. Think of the recognition, the funding, Think of your blood," Louise snapped, pointing to the crimson staining Marlowe's face. "The stone took it. You think that's discovery? That's sacrifice." We argued until silence pressed harder than words. The jungle itself seemed to lean in, listening. That was when I noticed it. The quiet. No birds, no insects. The Amazon is never silent, yet here, in the shadow of this city, it was as though every living thing had fled. We pushed deeper among the ruins, searching for answers or perhaps just an escape from the memory of the altar. The city sprawled beneath the canopy, vast avenues of cracked stone lined with statues half swallowed by vines. They weren't warriors or kings. They were watchers. Each statue bore an expression of horror, mouths frozen mid-scream, eyes wide as if they had witnessed something unspeakable. Their stone was worn smooth in places, but the detail of their anguish remained sharp, too sharp to dismiss as erosion. Sophia touched one gingerly, her fingers tracing its twisted features. "These aren't effigies," she said softly. "They're captives, immortalized." A shudder crawled up my spine. I could almost hear them, thousands of stone throats caught mid-scream, waiting to finish what terror had silenced. At the plaza's heart stood a monolith taller than the trees. Its surface was unmarked, smooth as glass, reflecting our torchlight even in the weak daylight. I approached, compelled by something I couldn't name. My reflection wavered in its black surface, and then it blinked. I staggered back, nearly colliding with Sophia. She caught me, eyes narrowing. "You saw something!" Before I could answer, Louise hissed for silence. We froze. Something moved at the edge of the ruins. Tall, impossibly thin shapes slipping between the trees. Their movements were wrong, jerky yet fluid, like marionettes half-controlled by clumsy hands. Marlowe swore under his breath. Locals? Tribes? But no human cast shadows that long. No human shimmered faintly as if made from the same glow that seeped from the altar. The shapes didn't approach, but they didn't leave either. They stood at the boundary of the plaza, watching us with faces we couldn't see. The statues around us seemed to lean closer in the silence, mouths frozen in their eternal scream. "We need to leave," I whispered. Louise nodded, already stepping backward. But the city had no intention of letting us go. Behind us, the path we had entered through was gone, swallowed by trees that hadn't been there an hour ago. The city shifted around us, alive, awake, and it was watching. The glow thickened, like veins of molten metal threading across the altar. None of us moved. The jungle's noise outside, the cicadas, the distant parrots, vanished, replaced by a silence so absolute it rang in my ears. The air smelled suddenly metallic, sharp as fresh blood, and each breath scraped my throat. Marlowe, ever the skeptic, stepped forward, though his swagger was forced now. "Phosphorescent fungus," he muttered. His words wavered as though he needed to convince himself. A trick of the stone, nothing more. But when he placed his hand on the altar, the glow pulsed brighter. The grooves flared in rhythm with his heartbeat, casting his face in shifting, grotesque shadows. For one dreadful instant, his veins glowed beneath his skin, as if the altar were drinking him in. He yanked his hand back with a hiss. "It's warm," he said, voice shaking. "Alive." Luis backed toward the corridor, his machete clutched tight, though it would do nothing against stone. "We leave now. Seal this hole. Pretend we never—" A sound cut him off. A sigh, low, drawn out, like the exhale of something vast awakening after centuries of sleep. The torches flickered, their flames bending inward toward the altar as though pulled by an unseen current. Sophia dropped her sketchbook. "It's breathing." The basin at the altar's base darkened, liquid seeping upward as though summoned from the stone itself. It was black at first, then shimmered red under our torchlight. Blood, or something made to look horribly like it, filled the channels, overflowing onto the floor. The scent was unmistakable: copper, salt, and decay. Marlowe stumbled back, whiskey courage finally failing him. "Impossible. This isn't—" I cut him off. "It's not natural." The whispers returned, louder now, spilling into every crevice of my skull. They weren't words I knew, yet their meaning gnawed at me, raw and insistent. Hunt, Jer, release, return. Louis snapped. He charged the altar with his machete raised, shouting prayers I barely recognized. The blade struck the black stone with a clang that reverberated through the chamber. Sparks flew. For an instant I thought he'd done it, broken whatever curse lingered here. But the altar didn't crack. Instead, the glow surged, coursing up the serpentine columns. The carvings writhed, their stony coils shifting as if alive. One serpent opened its mouth and a stream of dust poured out, thick and choking, carrying with it a stench like burnt hair. Sophia gagged, covering her mouth. "We have to go, now!" We ran, our torches throwing wild shadows across the walls. The whispers chased us, growing sharper, more insistent until I thought my skull would split. Behind me the glow pulsed brighter still, casting the chamber in a bloody haze. At the threshold I glanced back. For the briefest second I saw shapes rising from the altar, elongated forms, half-formed, pressing upward through the blood. They had too many limbs, too many eyes, and yet none were fully human. I nearly tripped over my own feet scrambling into the passage. The air outside felt no safer, thick with the echo of that sigh. Marlowe bent double, retching, while Luis dropped to his knees, face buried in his hands. Sophia stared back into the dark opening, her expression unreadable. "It wasn't just a city," she whispered. "It was a prison." The jungle swallowed her words whole. And I realized with a shiver that the thing inside hadn't been buried by time. It had been buried by intent. Morning broke heavy with mist, thick strands of it curling between the trees like pale snakes. Every breath tasted of wet stone and fungus, the kind of damp that clings to the bones. Luis was already awake, sharpening his machete with slow, deliberate strokes, though he didn't meet my eyes. Marlowe poured himself a finger of whiskey, muttering about cataloging the ruins, while Sophia sketched the carvings with hands that trembled slightly more than she wanted us to notice. The wall loomed behind us, monstrous in its silence. No birds perched on its ledges. No vines clung to its face, though the jungle had claimed every other surface around it. The stones were slick but bare, as though something repelled growth. Even the moss avoided it, curling away in patches that looked like burns. "There," Sophia said suddenly, pointing to a section where the carvings dipped inward. Beneath a tangle of hanging vines was an opening, narrow but distinctly worked by hands. A gateway. Louis swore under his breath. Nothing good hides in holes. Marlowe grinned like a child at Christmas. And yet the greatest treasures always do. He hacked away the vines with reckless strokes, revealing a dark arch yawning like a throat. The air that wafted out was stale, sour, tinged with minerals. It reeked of stone long sealed away. We lit our torches. The flames sputtered as if reluctant to burn. The passage descended at a steep angle, steps worn but intact, leading into blackness that seemed endless. Our footsteps echoed strangely, too loud, as though the stone amplified every sound, then swallowed it again. I ran my fingers over the walls. The stone was smooth, almost polished and warm to the touch, as if the earth itself had a pulse. Symbols lined the walls, not just the inverted pyramids, but twisted forms resembling limbs, eyes, and something like mouths, all interconnected by lines that spiraled inward to a single point. The artistry was deliberate, unsettlingly precise. Sophia traced them with her pencil, her face pale. "These aren't depictions," she whispered. "They're instructions." "Instructions for what?" I asked. Her lips tightened. "Rituals." Louis stopped walking. "We go back, now." His voice was sharp, urgent, the tone of a man who'd seen enough to know better. But Marlowe laughed, torchlight dancing in his wild eyes. "Superstition. We're standing in a city lost to time. Do you not feel it? History breathing beneath your feet?" He pressed on before any of us could argue. The corridor widened into a chamber. My torchlight fell across a ceiling impossibly high, supported by columns carved into serpents twisting upon themselves. At the center stood a slab of black stone, perfectly rectangular, its surface etched with grooves that led into a shallow basin below. Dried stains darkened the stone, brown-red, unmistakable, even after centuries. A sacrificial altar. The realization hit all of us at once. Even Marlowe faltered, though he tried to mask it with forced bravado. The whispers returned, soft, almost indistinguishable, but threading through the silence like veins of poison. They didn't echo, they vibrated, resonating in the walls, in our skulls. I pressed my hands against my ears. It didn't matter. The sound wasn't entering from outside. It was inside, clawing its way deeper. Luis dropped his torch. "We should not be here," he rasped, voice trembling. "This place remembers." And as the last word left his mouth, the altar pulsed. A faint, sickly glow seeped from the grooves, spilling into the basin like blood set alight. The map smelled of rot. Even before I unfolded it, the stench of mold and something older, something almost coppery, clung to my fingers. I'd found it tucked inside a hollowed-out journal at a flea market in Belém, its yellowed pages scribbled with Portuguese notes that ended abruptly in a spidery scrawl. "Não escave, eles não devem despertar." Do not dig. They must not awaken. I should have laughed it off. Instead, I traced the ink with my thumb. The lines were precise, carved almost into the paper, showing a winding tributary of the Amazon that no modern chart included. At its center was a symbol I'd never seen before, an inverted pyramid crowned with jagged rays. The vendor, an old woman with cataract-clouded eyes, watched me too closely as I paid. "That map is not for finding," she said in a hushed tone, voice hoarse as rust. "It is for warning." I wanted to dismiss her, but my chest tightened as though she'd laid a hand over my heart. 2 weeks later, I was cutting through the humid green hell of the Amazon with 3 companions. Luis, a broad-shouldered guide, Marlowe, a wiry British anthropologist with a taste for whiskey, and Sophia, a Brazilian archaeologist whose sharp mind hid behind guarded eyes. None of them believed the map, but I did. The journal's final line looped endlessly in my head. "Do not dig." The jungle closed around us like a lung. The air smelled of wet earth, decaying vegetation, and the faint metallic tang of the river. Cicadas screamed so loudly it felt like pressure behind my eardrums. We hacked through tangled vines, machetes ringing like crude bells in the damp silence between insect shrieks. On the 4th day, we reached the tributary. It was exactly where the map had promised, though no satellite or survey had ever recorded it. The water was sluggish, black, reflecting nothing but the canopy above. Luis muttered a prayer under his brow, as he dipped the canoe paddle into its surface. The river seemed to resist him, as if reluctant to let us pass. By the 6th day, ruins emerged. At first, just stone blocks half swallowed by roots. Then archways, cracked but defiant, rising from the forest floor. And finally, a wall. A vast, moss-choked barrier carved with the same inverted pyramid I'd seen on the map. Marlowe whooped. "A lost city. My God, do you realize what this means? We'll rewrite history." Sophia's eyes lingered on the carvings longer than she admitted. "These aren't like any Amazonian culture I know. The geometry, it's wrong. Too sharp, too deliberate." Luis spat into the dirt. "The forest tried to bury this place. You should let it stay buried." But none of us listened. Not really. The hunger to know, to see what no one else had seen, was stronger than fear. That night, as we camped beneath the towering wall, I awoke to whispers. They slithered through the dark, dry and brittle like leaves in a fire. I sat upright, heart hammering, and saw the carvings faintly glowing. The inverted pyramid pulsed with a light that wasn't light, a shimmer that made my vision stutter. For a moment, I thought I saw shapes moving behind the stone, as though something pressed from the other side, eager to break through. "Do not dig." The warning had returned, louder than before, echoing inside my skull. But by morning, curiosity had already begun to smother my fear.